Hello and welcome to this webinar on time management brought to you by CARBA. I'm Olivia Landsberg, I'm a coach and facilitator and I'll be your host for the webinar. In this webinar I want to look at the 6 rules of time management. In this webinar I want to look at the 6 rules of time management and run through a couple of short exercises with you. If there's one level playing field in the world, it's the fact that we all have 168 hours a week, no more, no fewer. And if you imagine looking back at your life when you're 90, where do you wish you'd focused your time? So the first and the golden rule of time management is accept you'll never get everything done. Simple as that. Life throws a plethora of possibilities and challenges at us every day. We could always do something better, quicker or more efficiently, no matter how effective we are. There are just too many variables in life, so let's take the pressure off ourselves. The other rules we're going to look at are choose where to focus your attention, Parkinson's law, that work expands to fill the time available, planning the work and working the plan, timing your to-do list, and having a strategy for inbox management. So let's begin. Anthony Robbins, the American motivational speaker and author of the bestseller Unlimited Power, says we overestimate what we can do in a day and we underestimate what we can do in a year. That sentence sums up our need for clearer strategies, both for short-term and longer-term goals. We have 1,440 minutes in a day. The point is, where do you want to focus your attention? Time is spent on what we focus on. And if we can link it to what we want to achieve, our goals, our vision, our purpose, rather than our fears and problems, we'd be a lot happier in the process. So hopefully you have a pen and paper to hand. I want you to think about a typical day and write down the sorts of activities you do and how long you spend doing them. The aim of this exercise is to get a realistic and non-judgmental picture of what's so, what the current reality looks like. A temporal balance sheet, if you like. You could start with how many hours you sleep, or maybe how much time you spend eating your king-size breakfast. There's the school run, domestic chores like cleaning, washing, ironing. Write down now some of the things you do in a typical day. Do you work 9 to 5? If so, how much time is spent in meetings and teleconferences that are critical to success? And how much time on the unuseful ones? How much thinking time do you have in a typical day without interruptions? And what are the main interruptions you face? How much time is spent focused on other people's priorities rather than your own? I'll just give you a moment to capture your thoughts. Now, I want you to write down, and there's no need to think too hard about this, how much time in a typical day you spend in a state of stress or anxiety, being adrift or unfocused, feeling triggered or angry or blaming, resenting, complaining. How much time you might spend on repetitive or unproductive habits like excessive PlayStation use or Twitter or Facebook. How much time you spend procrastinating. And how much time you spend feeling tired and fatigued. Gosh, it's all adding up, isn't it? So what I want to do is introduce you to a framework which is used all over the world and is excellent for helping us focus. You may have come across this framework before. It was conceived by Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it's called Covey's Time Management Matrix. So left to right is an urgency scale. So the left side are urgent tasks and the right side are not. Top to bottom is the scale of importance. The top are important tasks and the bottom is not. So there are 4 quadrants. The first quadrant comprises urgent and important tasks. So this includes meeting deadlines, picking up the meeting deadlines, picking kids up from school, crises, and firefighting. Quadrant 2 are tasks that are important, but they're not urgent. They don't have to be done right now. Things like thinking time, planning, relationship building, and also things that are important, such as health and fitness and family time. Quadrant 3, so this includes interruptions, some meetings. One, two, three. Have I gone mute? Okay. I may have just looked down or something. Okay. Okay. That's fine. Should I go back to quadrant 2? Quadrant 3 are the tasks that are urgent but not important. So this could include things like interruptions, some meetings, some emails, and it also includes other people's priorities. Quadrant 4 are the tasks that are not urgent and not important. Can I just ask, when I move my cursor, do you see it? When I move it? There on the... Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I've been doing that a lot. Okay, fine. Quadrant 4 are tasks that are not urgent and they're not important. So this could include things like TV, surfing the internet, playing on a PlayStation, could include worrying, procrastinating, and some of the trivial things that we seem to kill time doing. Quadrant 2 is the quadrant that often gets overlooked, and in fact it's the most important. It's in this quadrant where you're in control, you're being proactive and not reactive. A friend of mine is a partner at a bank, and I asked him what his secret to success was, and he said, well, I spend 80% of my time walking around the office talking to people and 20% of my time talking to clients. He lives his life in quadrant 2. It's important for nurturing those relationships, but it's not urgent, and many, many bosses and leaders of organizations don't invest that time. So have a look at all the tasks that you wrote down just now and start placing them in quadrants. Sleep, for example, might be in quadrant 2, as would time for an adequate breakfast. The school run is probably quadrant 1, along with a few of the domestic chores. Those ineffectual meetings. Okay, strange. It's not a battery thing, is it? No. Okay. Okay. Is it too close to me? No. Okay. Fine. Where from? Okay. Sleep would probably be in quadrant 2, as would time be. No. Sleep would be in quadrant 2, as would time for an adequate breakfast be. The school run is probably quadrant 1, along with some of the domestic chores. Ineffectual meetings are probably quadrant 3, but you may think quadrant 4 is more appropriate. So as you start putting your activities into these quadrants, what do you notice? What is this exercise making you aware of? With the Quadrant 1 activities, ask yourself, how could you deal with these more effectively? With Quadrant 2, these activities are key to time management and personal effectiveness. Without planning, thinking, or investing time in relationships that are important, we're doomed to a life of mere survival. So the key to kick-starting Quadrant 2 activities is scheduling them. Yes, you're allowed to put time into your diary for thinking time. Quadrant 3. You might want to ask yourself here, where could you save yourself time? Are those meetings really essential to success? Are they well chaired? Is there feedback I could give to chairing them better or making them more useful? How can you push back on other people's priorities? And which activities can only be done by you? And which ones could you delegate? In terms of Quadrant 4, how could you minimize or eradicate these activities? What could you replace them with? Many Quadrant 4 activities are habits, and while habits are not easy to break, it is possible. The good news about Quadrant 4 activities is that they point to a lot of time that you can potentially free up and reinvest elsewhere. So the optional homework for you after this webinar is to think about your ideal typical day. So it's doing the exercise again, but this time writing down all the activities and time spent on them, as you did earlier, but with your ideal day in mind. Again, put them into the 4 quadrants, and then ask yourself what would need to change to make your day look more like this one. What needs to be in place? Do you need to hire a cleaner or somebody to mow the lawn? Do you need to delegate? Can you share chauffeuring the kids with other parents or people? Could you learn to say no more? When is the best time of day or week for you to do detailed work or strategic work? And where is the best place for you to think and plan? But remember Parkinson's law, work expands to fill the time available. So schedule your deadlines as well as your hours of work. Create one deadline at a time and then meet it. The 4th rule of time management is plan the work and work the plan. Now, a plan of action doesn't have to be detailed, but it's useful to just consider these 5 elements. Obviously, the why of the plan, the clarity of the goal and the purpose. These are critical because it helps us buy emotionally into what we're doing. For example, the goal might be to raise £5,000 for Save the Children by organising a street party. Well, the purpose is to give the local community a chance to have fun and get to know each other. Or a goal might be to declutter my office, and the purpose is to create a calm and effective environment to work in. The second element of planning the work and working the plan is establishing the priorities. What must be done to ensure success? So what are the success factors you need to focus on? It's not about a long to-do list. This is not about a long to-do list. Work backwards from the end point. For example, a street party. The priorities might be creating a great experience, setting a date, and inviting people. The aim is to have a maximum of 3 or 4 priorities. Any more, and it's hard to keep them front of mind. The third element of the plan is to break down those priorities into specific tasks, and then, number 4, to put them in sequence. And finally, the critical Quadrant 2 activity of scheduling, when you and your team will be able to undertake those tasks. Remember, plans can change. They're only there to provide direction and motivation. They're not the finished goods. A common question people ask in my workshops is around how to deal with mental blocks. Of course, I can't be specific without knowing some of the context of your challenges, but there are some rules of thumb. One of them is around the sort of questions you ask yourself. Generally, we're not great at asking ourselves great questions. They tend to be questions like, how come I can't lose weight? Or what's the point? Or what if I fail? Well, ask a poor question and you get a poor answer. I can't begin to lose weight because I'm lazy. So let's look at how we can reframe some of our language about time. Rather than say, I don't have time, why not ask myself, how can I make time? Rather than tell yourself there's too much to do, you could ask, what must be done to ensure success? What are the success factors? Or what mission critical? Or what are the success factors? Or what's mission critical here and what's just a nice to have? And when we're caught up with it's too hard, why not ask, what smaller action could I do? Or who could help me with this? Or remind yourself of the personal benefits of taking action. Now, I'm a big list maker. Maybe you are too. Here's a little tip I think I may have discovered for myself many years ago. It's timing your to-do list. You might find in doing this many of your tasks would in reality take under 5 minutes to do, in which case you could either do them there and then or maybe schedule 1 hour when you can zip through 12 of them. Mark Forster, author of Get Everything Done and Still Have Time to Play, suggests choosing only 3 must-do items for your list per day. Anything else should be added below the line and can be prioritized at the end of the day. Obviously, there are sometimes priority interrupts that hit us all full on, but if you only have a few must-dos on your list, it may make those crises a little less overwhelming. Another frustration that is aired in workshops is the constant influx of emails and information. In fact, there are plugins and Excel filters you can use and a stream of geeky answers you can find on the internet. David Allen, author of Getting Things Done, suggests the DDDD method. Only handle an email once and choose either to deal with it, delegate it, defer it, or drop it. I'd add that if you have notification sounds turned on, turn them off and learn to check your emails just twice, maybe 3 times a day. Another great tip from David Allen is the 2-minute rule. It does what it says on the tin. It helps overcome procrastination and laziness by making it so easy to start taking action you just can't say no. If you determine an action can be done in 2 minutes, do it right then, because it would take longer to organize it or review it or write it on a list than it would to actually finish it the first time you notice it. It's surprising how many things we put off that we could get done in 2 minutes or less. Washing the dishes immediately after your meal, tossing the laundry in the washing machine, taking out the garbage, cleaning up clutter, sending that email, and so on. Can all of your goals be accomplished in less than 2 minutes? Obviously not, but every goal can be started in 2 minutes or less. And that's the purpose behind this little rule. The 2-minute rule works for big goals as well as small goals because it's a simple way to breed the consistency of action. For example, do you want to eat more healthily? Well, just eat 1 piece of fruit. Takes 2 minutes, and you'll often find yourself inspired to make just eat 1 piece of fruit, 2-minute rule, and you'll often find yourself inspired to make a healthy salad as well. Maybe you want to make reading a habit. Well, just read the first page of a new book. Only takes 2 minutes. And before you know it, the first 3 chapters have flown by. Or maybe you want to run 3 times a week. Well, what about every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, just get your running shoes on and go outside the front door? Only takes 2 minutes. Maybe you'll end up putting mileage on your legs instead of popcorn on your stomach. Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's the problem. Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's the problem. Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's... Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's the problem. It's the backlog of what we should have been done. Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's... Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's... No. Often, though, it's not what we plan to do that's the problem. It's the backlog of what should have been done. And as we get more overwhelmed, we procrastinate and it gets worse. Mark Forster offers this approach to dealing with backlogs. Step 1 is draw a line. Say to yourself, everything that comes in from now on I will deal with immediately. And I'll tackle the backlog bit by bit. Ring fence the backlogs. Ring fence the backlogs so they don't get any bigger. Step 2 is clearing incoming material daily. The best way to deal with incoming paper, emails, phone calls is to have a checklist which you go through several times a day. So I have a list which comprises about 5 items and I go through checking each one off. I do it first thing, after lunch and early evening. Because this keeps me right on top of the incoming material, I can sometimes get through the list in as little as 10 minutes. More often it may take me an hour, but I don't have any backlogs, so the rest of my time is free to get on with creative work. Step 3 is reducing the incoming volume. One of the reasons backlogs build up in the first place is because we attract far too much inessential stuff. Chuck junk mail in the trash without even opening it. Cancel subscriptions for newsletters you don't read. Don't write off for things that you don't need. Keep asking yourself, why am I receiving this? And step 4 is to get rid of the backlogs bit by bit. If you do steps 1 and 2 correctly, your backlogs can now only get smaller. Don't try to rid the lot in one go. That's too much pressure. Keep chipping away at them bit by bit. With emails, try clearing 1 day at a time, starting with the oldest. With paperwork, try clearing it 1 subject at a time, such as just doing the bank statements or just doing the bills, and so on and so forth. As a summary of this webinar, here are 10 tips for effective time management from the Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic's the largest non-profit medical and research organisation in the world, and they offer this advice. Planning each day, and each week and each month, I would add. It takes less time than we think to plan. Prioritising your tasks. Mark Forster, author of Get Everything Done and Still Have Time to Play, suggests that you just have 3 must-do priority lists on your day. I've already said that anyway. Excuse me. Number 2 is prioritise your tasks. Number 3, say no to non-essential tasks. Sorry, I'm just going to go back to number 1 on that list, okay? So number 1 is plan each day. I would add plan each week and each month as well. It often takes less time than we think to do this. Number 2, prioritize your tasks. Number 3, say no to non-essential tasks. Number 3, say no to non-essential tasks. Number 4 is delegate. Mark Forster, author of Get Everything Done and Still Have Time to Play, recommends you ask yourself which parts of your work can only be done by you and which can you delegate as much as possible. The next one is breaking large tasks into smaller tasks. If you're feeling overwhelmed by the size of a task, ask yourself what one 2-minute action would get the ball rolling. The next one is the 10-minute rule. That's to say, pick your most dreaded task and allocate just 10 minutes to progressing it. The next tip is evaluating how you spend your time, reflecting and noticing what's working and what's not. The next one is to limit distractions such as Facebook, obsessive cleaning, or TV, or your other little vice. And the next one is investing time in good quality sleep, diet and exercise. And finally, remember to take breaks. At least one break every hour. And finally, to take breaks. At least one break every 2 hours, no matter how pressured you're feeling. Intellectually, we know this, don't we? What I recommend you do is pick just one of these tips right now. What would be great is to put it into action today and see what results you get from it. Which one would you choose? If you want to explore time management further, we've compiled some reading suggestions for you. And of course, if you want to enroll on one of our one-day courses this year, it'll be great to see you. Meanwhile, have a fun and productive week, and thanks for listening.